And we're live. Good morning, everybody. It's Friday, September 9th, 2022, and Apple's Far Out event just happened this week. That means more Apple Watches to talk about, more iPhones to talk about, AirPods Pro 2 to talk about, and so much more, because this is the iMore show. I am your host, Luke Filipovich, writer for iMore, joined as always by Karen Freeman, iMore contributor, and our news editor at iMore, Stephen Warwick. Thank you both for joining me. This event was crazy. So much to go through. In terms of just a quick overview of everything that was sort of announced / launched. So in terms of products, we have the Apple Watch SE second generation, the second one, which we were expecting, the Apple Watch Series 8, which of course you're expecting, the Apple Watch Ultra, which was a very surprising and interesting announcement, which we'll dive deep into. That was sort of the Apple Watch Pro we had been hearing about in the rumors. The iPhone 14 and of course 14 Plus, which not Max. They went back to the Plus name because Apple just needs to figure out what they're doing with their naming conventions. The Apple 14 or the iPhone 14 Pro and Pro Max, of course, which I think we all are excited to talk about that when we get there. And then of course the AirPods Pro 2, which is a nice little update to a product that you can't do too much with. We're going to dive into all of that today. That's why we're starting half an hour early. Welcome to the super packed iMore show this week. Karen and Steven, I'll just start off. Before we dive into the nitty gritty, how did you like the event? What was your what was your standout moments? What's your overall impressions of the event? How about Karen? You go first.
I know it's getting a lot of negative press on Twitter and so forth. People just don't like the tone, or people are getting tired of prepackaged events. But I liked it. I thought it was good. I thought they did a good job of introducing all the products, and it was fast moving and slick and everything you expect from Apple without being like overly gimmicky or doing anything really silly. Sometimes they get a little silly, but I thought it was good.
Yeah, I'm probably like the opposite of Karen. I thought I do still really like the pre-packaged events. I think they're a lot kind of smoother and slicker without the awkward transitions and the waiting for like the audience and will they laugh at the jokes and stuff like that. But this one just felt like a bit of a long infomercial. Like it wasn't. Sometimes I think I agree with that. Sometimes they do stuff and it's like a bit too silly, like, all the Craig Federighi transitions and stuff like that. But like a little bit of whimsy, I think wouldn't have gone amiss. So like for me, generally the tone of the event was a little bit dreary, and like not even just like all the products were amazing, the dynamic island stuff like that, seeing all the different stuff Apple's been doing, it was all really exciting. But some of like the video, like when they sum up a product, it's like, okay, here's more about Apple Watch Ultra. The Apple Watch Ultra one was one specifically. Our colleague Oliver, who's one of our news contributors, messages during the video run to be like, are they trying to put us to sleep? Because it was like a deliberately kind of like quiet and hushed kind of tone and stuff like that. So I thought the event was like all the products and stuff fantastic, but it just seemed to lack like a bit of the dynamic and the fun, and like even the music. Like there was no music that I heard that was like, oh, what song is that? Like apart from maybe right at the beginning. But overall, I'm super happy. I'm glad we can start talking about all of these products as they are and exist and are real, and not just like what X, Y, and Z rumors have been saying for the last year, which is really nice.
I'll agree that the Apple Watch Ultra little commercial that they did was my absolute least favorite part, but not because it was boring, because it gave me anxiety. I didn't like it at all. It showed people doing all the things that would be my absolute worst nightmare to do. These snowy mountainscapes and people getting lost in the wilderness and deep sea dive. I mean, just everything I hate. It reminded me a little bit of the 1984. Like they were trying to go for the tone of the 1984 Macintosh commercial, that groundbreaking commercial that Steve Jobs commissioned, but they just went a little bit too scary. I don't know. I didn't like it.
Yeah. I echo some of your sentiments, Stephen, that like the tone, like to me, what was a little different than I think we've had in the past, and I did think it missed that whimsy. I personally like all the Craig Federighi moments we can get, so I was a little sad not to see any of this event.
Yeah. See, I normally don't like them, but then the fact that there weren't any, there was nothing. I don't remember a single. Maybe I just missed them. I don't remember like a single funny or fun like transition or like somebody on the roof of Apple Park for no reason, or it was just like product information, which maybe it was a 90-minute event. I think it was quite long. Apple probably thought it had a lot to pack in, didn't want to lose people's attention too much, but it's like I think because we intently cover these events, and this is the fourth remote event, fifth remote like keynote we've kind of done. Maybe they're just getting a little bit stale, possibly. I don't know.
I did miss Craig and his hair very much.
Yeah, exactly. And Annie in the comments here says, where was Craig? And so I think we can all agree more Craig would have been nice, except maybe Steven. Steven's half on board with more Craig.
some Craig, like there can be a bit of Craig, just not too much. Yeah,
just not too much Craig and his glorious hair. Yeah, so starting off, they went to Apple. They did the Apple Watch announcer first, and it started off once again with, and they've done this before when they introduced no Apple Watches, but it started off with kind of a collage of personal accounts from the Apple Watch, helping people in emergency situations, helping people who have what's the word? There was a triathlete,
like SOS situations and different things like that. People who use it. I thought this was a little bit strange. I could totally see what they were going for. The Apple Watch has saved lots of people's lives. Whether that is calling for help or calling the emergency services or alerting a family member when someone is lost hiking or has had an accident like on a mountain bike or has been in a car crash. And then also there was some like kind of health specific ones, right? Like the atrial fibrillation, I think kind of stuff came up in there. But there was like a bit of a kind of buy an Apple Watch or you'll die sort of tone to it, which I think didn't quite land with a lot of, folk on Twitter and stuff like that. But yeah, it was a whole collage of, like you said, Luke, of kind of people who have in some way like had their life saved, I think was kind of the theme by Apple Watch.
Yeah. And I can understand maybe some criticisms of that, but I even tweeted this out when it was happening. I don't get tired of those stories. I really don't. I think it's just such an important part and of Apple's philosophy behind the Apple Watch 2 and the sort of, the features they try to add to help people, in various situations. It's not necessarily just SOS situations. There's other health features that can be super, super important to people who have, things like atrial fibrillation is super important to somebody who has a history of AFib. So it's just, I love hearing those stories and hearing them come from actual people. They've done it quite a few times. Don't get me wrong. So it's not like, it's not really novel at this point. So I can understand maybe it wearing on some people, but I love stories like that. And it just kind of reminds me, tech is cool and fun, and there's and people should have a lot of fun with it. There's just like a real practical reason for these devices in a lot of situations, and I think that sometimes goes understated, especially in our industry where we're always focused on the new spec. We're focused on how much RAM the iPhone 14 has and things like that. And so it's just a nice little reminder. Can Apple be a little heavy-handed with it? Probably. I'll admit to that, but I think it's cool. I think it's interesting to hear those stories. And stories from athletes too. Like they had a story in there from a triathlete who I believe was vision impaired. He said during his thing, I believe it was vision impaired, but I could be wrong. I apologize if I'm wrong, but he just talked about how, the Apple Watch helps him train and be able to do what he loves to do. And I think stories like that too are it's not just always emergency SOS stuff. I feel like we could maybe even use more stories like that. Tell us how the Apple Watch like helps you do what you want to do in life. You know what I mean? Like that's a cool angle for sure. So from there, we went into the Apple Watch SE 2, which
it was Series 8 first, was it not?
Was it Series 8 first?
I'm pretty sure, yeah.
I guess the series, I guess they were kind of together. They sort of matched them together, but I do believe you're right. So yeah, Apple Watch Series 8 was the first one they announced. So the big heavy hitters from the Apple Watch Series 8, the design the same. It looks like the Apple Watch Series 7. It's still the same two case sizes. So you have the 41 millimeter and the 45 millimeter. Pardon me. It doesn't have any new, unlike what we saw in the Ultra, which we'll get to in a little bit, but it doesn't have any new, doodads on it. It looks the same, feels the same. It'll look like the Apple Watch you always do have. Features, though, it has a few features that aren't on previous models. The biggest one being a temperature sensor, which apparently are actually two sensors. There's one under, Apple said there's one underneath that's close to your skin, and there's actually one under the screen. And apparently this is what makes it so accurate, which they say is sensitive enough to detect a difference in your body of 0.1 degrees Celsius, which is
0.01, actually, I think, which is even more sensitive. Yeah, that's. I'm sure. I'm watching the. Oh no, sorry. The image doesn't match the thing. It is 0.1, but then they have a picture that shows someone whose temperature has deviated by 0.01 degree Fahrenheit from baseline.
Interesting.
So,
yeah, they said 0.1 in the actual thing, which is a pretty slight change in your temperature, which I think is pretty interesting. I mean, for me personally, it's like I think about this and I think about having this on and being like, what's the usefulness of this? And I guess like it really is just to sort of like potentially detect illnesses before I might know if I have them, right?
Yeah,
because
definitely
fever is your body's
fever
is your body's like biggest sign that you have like some sort of active infection, right?
Yes, and I can tell you two things I can tell you from personal experience. One of them is that yes, I do believe that fevers that indicate illness do show up before they will register on a traditional thermometer. And I can tell you when that's actually happened. I work in a preschool, and I work with babies, and one of them was being uncharacteristically clingy and fell asleep on my. Actually, this happened twice. She was two different babies. They fell asleep on my shoulder, which they don't normally do. And they just were out of it. And I could tell something was wrong. And I said, let's take their temperature. We took their temperature. The thermometer showed nothing. So they stayed all the rest of the day. And I'm like, there was a hand, foot, mouth going around the classroom. And I said, this kid's getting it next. In both cases, I was right. So there is sometimes a slight, and I could feel the baby was warm. So there is sometimes a slight elevation in temperature that wouldn't necessarily register with a regular thermometer. And then the other situation where this is important is getting your basal temperature for a woman when you're trying to conceive. Again, it's a slight, it's not a fever. It's not something that's necessarily going to register with a regular thermometer. It's just a slight increase in temperature. So that's another situation where that would be important.
Yeah, and that's the other thing that Apple went right into after this was the improvements the temperature sensor will add to its cycle tracking features to track menstruation cycles for people who menstruate. So it's now apparently this will help it be more accurate, Apple says, in terms of just figuring out your ovulation times, things like that. And it can also even give you warnings about when your cycle might be deviating off of its normal path. If you've been tracking it for a while and you have some sort of normal pattern, Apple will kind of be able to use some of this information, and the temperature sensor plays a big part in that, and maybe telling you when your cycle's off, it's gone off its normal sort of cycle. So that's interesting. I think cycle tracking came out of, I believe, on the Series 6, if I remember correctly. But it's we haven't heard. My point is, since it's been launched, we haven't really heard much about it, or has it been upgraded or kind of highlighted by Apple in any way. So I thought that was interesting, and I thought that was good. Because there's people who use that stuff, and the cycle tracking thing, especially in the US, is getting a little interesting. We don't have to get into the politics of it all, but Apple did make sure to remind people that cycle tracking data is encrypted right on your Apple Watch. And if you do want to share it, like if you do want to have it, go places, there are ways to make it end-to-end encryption, where even Apple can't access your data, and essentially it's using all of Apple's stuff. So don't use, if you're concerned about that, don't use third-party things if you're concerned about that at all. But Apple took a decent amount of time describing that, and that encryption was part of the core of this, to be able to sort of keep that information private and only for you and the people you want to know about it. So I think that's just, I think that's just because of what's going on in the world right now, that Apple took the time to say that. But I think the minute they started talking about it, I knew they were going to have to say something. So I was glad to see that they, offered that to people to sort of, quell fears of that nature. Hopefully it's enough. I don't know. Obviously I'm not someone who menstruates, so I don't know. I won't. This isn't a feature that affects me, but I know for millions and millions and millions of people, it's something that they're probably looking at very, very intently. So it was nice that Apple took the time to sort of explain that as best they could in the format that we are kind of given. So I like to see that. It was interesting to sort of see an update to a feature that kind of got included a little bit ago, and we hadn't really heard much since. So moving on, another thing is crash detection. So much like fall detection, which you may know is when, if you fall, your Apple Watch will can use the sensors inside to tell that you've fallen. It'll display a message on the screen being like, hey, it seems like you've fallen. Do you want to call emergency services? And if you don't respond to it by saying cancel or call, it'll automatically do it within 10 seconds. Well, now there's crash detection. New and improved a 3-axis gyroscope and a G-force accelerator inside the Apple Watch Series 8 will be able to tell when you're in a car crash. Crash detection actually uses a lot of sensors to determine if you've been in a severe crash. So the idea here is you don't want it to go off for fender benders, obviously.
Yeah.
So it uses several things. It uses the barometer, it uses GPS, it uses the microphone on your iPhone actually to even process if you've been into like a serious crash. When it detects a severe crash, it'll automatically call 911. If you don't respond within 10 seconds, it'll provide your location when it can, and it would also notify your emergency contacts if you've set that up inside your iPhone. So I think this is a great quality of life improvement. I think once again, it's just another place that, and Apple mentioned this in their intro to this feature, was that lots of car crashes happen on remote highways. And there's not really anyone around. And in fact, they even mentioned that lots of car crashes happen. It's a single vehicle. So it's just somebody, they've run off the road or, what have you. And if no one's around and you're in a remote location, it's going to be hard to get the help that you need. So I think, crash detection is kind of an extension of fall detection in a really interesting way. Immediately I thought, I'm a little worried about it going off in fender benders just because, those happen pretty frequently, especially during city driving. And
just make sure that you call off before 10 seconds elapse.
Yeah. I mean, I'm sure Apple has tested this severely. I'm sure it probably won't be that big of a deal, but like, it is something that I thought about when they announced it. I was like, if I scrape someone's fender as I'm trying to, parallel park, because I'm really bad at it.
I'm sure it wouldn't go off while you're parallel parking. But I mean, if you get in at a stop sign, somebody rear-ends you or something like that.
Yeah.
I'm sure your watch will ping multiple times. You'll feel it even if you don't think to do it, to check your watch. Your watch will like nag you for that full 10 seconds to to see if you want the emergency services called or not. So you'll have opportunity to say no.
The data comes from Crash Labs as well, so they've tested they've tested common types of passenger car impacts and accidents. So like head on, rear on, side impacts, and then also when you roll over your car as well. So I think there's like you said, like you don't want this going off, every time you kind of bump your car against a lamppost or whatever. But I think that's probably, quite well protected against in terms of like the severity of a crash, and does the Apple Watch know when to or not to make the call and stuff. But I agree, it is a cool like kind of quality of life, kind of update and improvement. The we'll get onto it. But it feels like Apple took a lot of time talking about these is because they haven't really changed much else in the Apple Watch Series 8, which is another thing, I guess.
Yeah, that's a theme. That's a
change,
theme we'll come back to, I think.
yeah, but if Apple's going to change one thing, I think crash detection is a pretty good one.
Yeah. Yes, and so those are kind of like the big features that are actually sort of like, from what I can tell, exclusive to the Series 8 and some of the new Apple Watches. They did, however, talk a lot about the new low power mode. So much so that at the beginning, I thought it was only a Series 8 thing. But then right at the end, they snuck it in that it's actually going to be in watchOS 9, which so that means any Apple Watch that's any Apple Watch Series 4 or newer will be able to take advantage of this. If you can install watchOS 9, you'll get the new low power mode, which I think is great. When I thought it was just the Series 8, I was like a little miffed. But this is nice. I think like with it on, you can get up to 36 hours of battery life, depending on how you use it. And it doesn't completely lock out your phone like the power reserve mode, which I believe, from what I can understand, is a separate thing and will still be on Apple Watches. So if you do just want to turn on the power reserve when you get really, really low, so you can just see the time, but you can't do anything else, that's still an option to you. But low power mode will essentially like potentially double your battery life, which at least on the Series 8, that's what they said specifically, which I think is really, really, really cool.
We heard about this for coming at WWDC. It was Mark Gurman who said there's a new low power mode coming, but that it was in watchOS 7, and then Apple didn't announce it. And I know we've discussed it here, or maybe it's a hardware specific feature, right? So it's for the next Apple Watch, not the software. It turns out neither is the case. Well, it is for watchOS 9, but Apple just reserved announcing it until the new watches come out. I think the interesting thing will be to say, Luke, like you said, low power mode, I think it's like you said, separate to power reserve, because from the low power interface, you can see it's like a toggle, so you can turn it on or off like you could low power mode on your phone. Whereas power reserve, once you go into power reserve, the only way to come out of it is to charge your watch, as far as I can recall. So that is helpful. And up to 36 hours, so it can extend the battery life up to 36 hours for the Apple Watch Series 8 with the iPhone present. So if you're not got your iPhone and you're relying more on like cellular data or anything like that, then that's going to shorten the battery life. And we also don't have any figures for any of the models beyond this. So did you say it doubles the battery life on the Series 8? Is that basically what it amounts to? Because it's 18 hours, isn't it? The Series 8?
So it can get up to 36 hours. Now, obviously, that's depending on use and things, but it says Apple says it can get up to 36 hours, which the regular battery life is 18 hours. So it's double.
So you would hope kind of maybe across the board, maybe not so much with some of the earlier models, but roughly doubling, or at least like significantly lengthening battery life across all of those other models, like we said with the low power mode. And this is great because, as we've said on here before, the power reserve mode, it renders your watch basically useless for all but telling the time, whereas this will disable certain sensors and features. You're always on display, automatic workout tracking, heart health notifications and stuff, but it will mean that you can continue to track workouts, listen to music, that sort of thing. So this is a big welcome change, and I'm glad it's coming to lots of models, not just the Series 8.
Yeah, and just to reiterate what Stephen just said there, I think it's important to note that it does kind of disable or limit the use of some sensors and stuff, obviously in an effort to conserve that battery power. So just be mindful of that. It sounds like, like Stephen said, most notably the always on display might just not work in low power mode. We're not entirely sure, but that's what it sounds like. And certain notifications like heart health notifications and stuff might be more limited. It'll probably track your heart rate a little less often, things like that. So there is, some trade-offs to that, but I think battery power or battery life on the Apple Watch has long been a thing that people have wanted to see increase. So I think anything they can do in that space has been awesome. So this is a welcome change, and I'm super, super thankful it's actually coming to watchOS. Like when I first thought it was just Series 8 only, I was like, damn, that sucks. Because I was just like, oh, that makes me want a brand new watch right now. But then another watch came along and did that. So we'll talk about that in a second. Quickly finishing this up, because there wasn't too much for the Apple Watch Series 8. As we sort of expected, there's only 2 finishes this time: aluminum, stainless steel. That's because titanium is reserved for the Apple Watch Ultra, which we'll talk about in just a little bit. And they're only available in 4 colorways, which is midnight, starlight, silver, and product red. That's for the aluminum finish, and the steel finish is available in gold, silver, and graphite. So a little less options than last time. You don't have a green or a blue like you had on the Series 7, but how many people bought a green or a blue Apple Watch? I'm not sure.
Does anybody want to know the poll results, what colors
Yes.
people are ordering?
Of course I do.
So for the Series 8 aluminum finish, midnight was the clear winner with 58%, then starlight with 20%, product red with 12%, and silver with 10%. That's with 97 votes.
Interesting.
And the stainless steel, the more upscale Apple Watches, graphite was the big winner with 35%, silver got 13%, gold got 2%, and then a whopping 50% said, no, thank you, I'm ordering the Ultra, or I ordered it.
Yeah, fair, which we're going to get into right away. But yeah, the nice thing to see, price didn't go up. It starts the same as it did before, $399 for the GPS only. Still has cellular as well that you can add on for extra money as well. But the starting price is $399, which I thought was nice. We've been talking a lot about potential inflation and things maybe hitting some of those prices, but some of those prices it seems to have stayed the same. So that's good. And you can order one already. I wouldn't be surprised if the shipping dates have already slipped, I'm sure. But September 16th, which is next Friday, is when they should be, if you got in early enough, will start shipping, and will also potentially be available at Apple retail locations, stock depending. So yeah, in a week, people are going to start having these, the Series 8 on their wrists. So
and you can no longer purchase an Apple Watch Series 3, finally.
Yes, finally, which you probably shouldn't have been able to for a while already. But yes, the Apple Watch Series 3 is officially gone. Apple's not selling it anymore, which is good. It doesn't need to be around. Speaking of cheaper Apple,
of course, if you already have one and you're using it, that's great. I'm just saying, we're just saying you shouldn't be buying a new Apple Watch 3 at this point.
Yeah. As Steven said, kind of alluded to earlier, the Series 8, not that exciting of an announcement. Mainly just because obviously they kept most of the big changes and features for the Ultra.
Same design, same chip, same like what are you paying for? I mean, the temperature sensor, will be as a big improvement, and could be, not life-saving, but life-changing for some people. So certainly if you're looking for a flagship, if this is the first time you're getting into Apple Watch, the Series 8 is a great option, but I don't know if it's worth upgrading from a Series 7, for instance.
No, I wouldn't say so.
Yeah, I would say the only way I could see it where like you really, really got to get it is if you really rely on cycle tracking and you really, really want that to be as best as possible, like that could be a reason to upgrade. Or if for some reason, I don't see why this would be happening, but if for some reason your Series 7 is having a lot of battery issues, maybe you'd want to upgrade, but like low power mode's coming to you anyway, so I don't think that's even a big deal. So yeah, it's definitely not a must get, I don't think, for most people, but it is a great if it's your first Apple Watch, or you're upgrading from a much older model, it'll be a great upgrade, and I think that's going forward, that's sort of what Apple is going to be doing with its Series 8s, and I think the Ultra is going to be reserved for the people who want the best. But we'll talk about that quickly. First, let's quickly round up the Apple Watch SE2, because there's also not a lot there to go over. It's essentially the same SE that we already have. It is slightly cheaper than the Series 8. It doesn't have the ECG app like the SE original had. Doesn't have the blood oxygen app, so you're missing out on those features.
No stainless steel. That's right, isn't it? It's just aluminum.
Yeah, it's just aluminum, no stainless steel. It's $249 for the GPS only, which is what it was before, which is great, and $299 for the cellular and GPS. It will, because obviously it'll support watchOS 9, so you'll get the low power mode like every watchOS 9 device will. It also has crash detection, actually. So that's interesting. It is kind of a new feature that is on there. It does have the sensors involved, so that's nice. And I think, like, probably a good feature not to railroad into only one device and not give it to people who want to save a little money, since it's a pretty can be a pretty impactful life-saving feature. Probably a good thing not to put those specifically in a certain watch. So that was good. But other than that, it's essentially the same. It does have the S8 chip, which is the same chip that is in the Series 8. So that's
the Series 7 and the Series 6. So
yeah. Well, didn't the Series 7 have the S7?
But that it was they didn't. I don't think they changed anything. Like it is different, because this has the S8, but it's still the same as last year, which was the S7. So like they give it a different name. They'll change like something, but like the general processing power, I think, is persisted over there.
They also,
which it should. Yeah.
During the event, they made a big thing about the Apple Watch SE being great for kids that don't have their own Apple Watch. You can loop it into your family plan, so you can control what your child can and can't do with the Apple Watch. They can, for example, text or call certain contacts that you select, and so that's kind of the market for this watch, I think.
Yeah, I think.
But again,
go
on, Luke.
Yeah, I was gonna say I agree with you, Karen. Like they did kind of mention through family setup, being able to set it up for a child or potentially even an older adult that you maybe want to keep a little extra eyes on or things like that. I think that's great. I also think I actually think it's a pretty great starting point if you've never had an Apple Watch before and you're like unsure about what you might like. I think it's a great starting point to sort of get into the ecosystem, see what it's about, use because it has all the fitness tracking capabilities of that the other ones do. So it's like it's a good upgraded Fitbit, if you want to put it that way a bit, where it gives you all the smartwatch capabilities you want with your iPhone. It gives you all that fitness tracking you want, and it's for a lower price. You don't need the fancy features. You're not worried about like the fancier health features or temperature sensors, things like that. So I think it's a good starting point. I'm glad they brought it back. I'm also glad that it didn't go up in price again, which is nice. Was worried about that.
And I'm glad that Apple is maintaining a quote unquote budget version of the Apple Watch.
Yeah. Not the $199 that you could get the Apple Watch Series 3 for, but once again, as we said, that wasn't really worth it for the past year, probably even 2 years. So
it is definitely worth more than $50 more than the Series 3. So
yeah,
if anything, you're getting a better deal by buying the SE than you would have by buying a cheaper Series 3.
Oh, 100%. All right, moving on to the darling of the Apple Watch announcements, the Apple Watch Ultra. So this is what we kept hearing. There was going to be like a more rugged Apple Watch that was kind of going to be like sort of for extreme sports enthusiasts. And here it is, the Apple Watch Ultra, which first of all, the name surprised me, even though I know it's just a name, but it was like another name, another little tag that they put on to some device. I could have sworn that Pro was probably right, as Mark Gurman had attested to, because it was like, it makes sense. It's also sort of like their mobile platform. It connects to the iPhone. Why wouldn't they use Pro? But they went with Ultra, which was different.
Surprised everybody.
I think though, now looking back on it, the name Ultra reflects, I think, better than probably any other word, the kind of outdoor, apart from like a rugged, or because we heard rugged, we heard explorer. Ultra doesn't sound too niche, whilst also reflecting, I think, really well the kind of very rugged and durable nature of the watch and kind of what it's designed for and who it's made for. So, but yeah, it took me completely by surprise. I think I'd started writing I was blogging for someone else, writing, and totally missed this. So I was going Apple Watch, and then I heard someone on the keynote say Apple Watch Ultra, and I was like, what? Like, when did that happen? So yeah, it was caught us all by surprise, which is nice.
Yeah, and I think it's a good name. I think you guys are right. It sort of encompasses everything about it.
Yeah, and it's It looks pretty impressive, actually. I was fairly impressed with the Apple Watch Ultra segment of the broadcast. And yeah, so right off the bat, it does have a different design. It is bigger. It is a 49 millimeter case, which is, you know, a whole 4 millimeters bigger than the 45 that's available on the Series 8. And it right away, just by looking at it, you can tell that it like looks a little more durable. It has a completely flat top glass. It has like chunky, it looks like chunkier sort of sides. Where
and
the
they
digital
house the glass as well, so it's not like the glass doesn't protrude at the edges like you do with the normal watches.
Yeah, and on the side where the digital crown is and the side button, it's kind of got like a little jut out that sort of strengthens, I think, that part of it too. And that helps make it look, you know, first of all, stand out and look different than just the Series 8, but also I believe helps with the overall ruggedness of it.
I think it also stops you pressing the buttons accidentally whilst you're out on the trails and stuff like that, which is good. And then the crown and the button have both been reworked, so they're easier to use with gloves on, which is, again, very important.
Yeah, because as part of this more rugged design, it can actually withstand some pretty interesting temperatures. So apparently it can work, from what Apple tells us, in 20 degrees Celsius minus 20 degrees Celsius or minus 4 Fahrenheit, all the way up to plus 50 Celsius or 131 Fahrenheit is sort of its operating temperature, which is pretty cool, actually. Like,
I never in my entire life want to experience either of those temperatures. Or even close.
I did minus 26 in Montreal once. It wasn't so bad, but
talking from the person who lives,
it's a wide range.
Who lives in a place where it constantly gets minus 30. Just having an Apple Watch that can keep up with that is kind of nice, even though I don't go trailing mountains pretty much ever. I mean, you know, you wear your jacket and then your normal Apple Watch is fine. It's not a big deal, but like, it's kind of cool that this can just like be on your wrist in sort of these more extreme temperatures.
Forget my watch, my body. I don't want it in any of those temperatures.
I mean, I would prefer to definitely stay in a more standard deviation of temperatures than that. But and on top of that, of being able to go cold and hot, it also is actually has even better sort of water resistance. So Apple Watch Ultra is certified to WR100, which actually means that it's okay for recreational scuba diving up to 40 meters. So it can go down a fair ways, which is pretty interesting.
I think that the regular Apple Watches are only rated to about 30 feet.
Yep. And definitely not diving.
And not diving even. That's
not
just
diving,
like getting in the water, going for a swim is fine. But like diving is not what you're supposed to do with your regular Apple Watch. No. But this one is like throw on some scuba gear and go see some coral reefs or something.
Yeah. And cool. The Apple Watch Ultra can actually be used as a dive computer, which I'm not a diver. I don't fully understand all the specs, but it sounds very cool.
Yeah. So there's a new depth app, which will automatically, once it detects that you're kind of diving and you're in water, it'll automatically kind of show up on your screen, and it'll display the time, of course, but your current depth, the water temperature, the duration you've been underwater, and the max depth you've reached, which I think is cool. I think, you know, for people who like this, as we said, this is meant for sports enthusiasts, people who want their Apple Watch to kind of go with them on these, you know, adventures, these treks, and this is good. I think, you know, being able to kind of get underwater and actually explore with it a bit is cool. I've never scuba dived in my life, but it makes me feel like I want to. The Compass app also gets a makeover in the Apple Watch Ultra, fitting in kind of with its ability to explore. The Compass app's actually getting a huge upgrade with the ability to add waypoints. So, you know, as you're sort of trekking along, if you're in the trails or if you're off trailing, you can kind of add waypoints to your journey, and you can kind of see where you've been, and it also like will kind of track your location a little more precisely, which, you know, if you do happen to get lost, would probably be pretty important, which I think is the main feature of this, kind of be able to help people be able to find you if that was the case. And yeah, there's even like a waypoint complication, which will update in real time and display your direction and distance, which I think is pretty cool.
Again, the thought of that, of needing something like that is just terrifying to me, but
Yeah.
it is a very cool feature to have.
Yeah. Yeah. Moving on, there's a night mode, which I kind of wish this was coming to every Apple Watch because it seems cool. It seems useful. But the display is actually, we didn't mention this yet, but the display is actually super bright for an Apple Watch display. It's 2000 nits, which is about twice as bright as the current sort of like Series 7 or Series 8 display.
Which will make it much easier to see in bright sunlight.
Yes, which will make it much easier to see in bright sunlight. But at night, if you're hiking at night, you don't want this bright screen flashing at you. So there's a night mode you can turn on that kind of turns everything to like a red display, which if you know anything about eyes and how they work, red light is a lot less harsh on our eyes, and it also like doesn't interfere with our night vision as much as your eyes are adapting to the dark. So I think like really cool but simple way to sort of effectively use the watch, in more situations. Now you can use it at night a lot easier. And, if you are night hiking, which I've done several times actually to go stargazing and things, especially when I worked at a camp years ago, it's any sort of like bright light that from a screen can like really like damage your night vision. So this is a great feature. It's really good for people who want to use it. So I'm happy to see this. I'm a little sad that it's like not on some of the other watches, unfortunately. Those are like the big sort of like software sort of features, but there's a lot of stuff that Apple hasn't quite dove into totally yet. But like, for example, there's a whole new button on the other side across from the digital crown and the side button. There's a new button called the action button, which Apple hasn't said a ton of what it does, but basically it's a customizable button that's supposed to allow you one-touch access to a ton of different features. Apple specifically mentioned the ability to like start a workout or move to the next interval during a custom workout as some of its uses. But I feel like this is going to be something that you can program in various apps to do various different things.
Yeah,
I think it's going to be very
grow
situational.
over time.
Yeah.
As developers are given access, third-party developers are given access to it, it'll do different things in different apps.
100%. And I think like we're just scratching the surface of what this can do. But the whole point is that you can tell what Apple's trying to do with this is that like it's the ability to interact with your watch less and have to spend less time doing this and more time, enjoying yourself, being out, keeping aware of your surroundings, and I think that's great. I think like that's what the Ultra is trying to do. It's like the Apple Watch you want to take on it when you almost don't want an Apple Watch in a way. It's like when you almost want to be left alone in nature to do what you're doing. You just want it to be able to do the things that you need it to do. So I think the action watch will be cool. I think as people get it on their wrists and as people use it, I think there'll be some really interesting ways that people will sort of find to sort of use it. And I'm curious like how far it could go. Like, is it possible that it could be, could it be programmed to help run shortcuts and things like that? Like, are there?
Yeah, that's what I was thinking of. Yeah.
Right. Yeah. So like I have a feeling that it could be like this whole new avenue of how people, just use their Apple Watch, whether they're exploring or just, in day-to-day life. So I'm really, really kind of interested in what the action button can do right now. It seems like it's mostly meant to kind of help you get to like certain things in certain apps, but I think like as it expands, there's a potential for like a lot of cool things, which I'm really, really excited about.
For sure. And PhonePot mentioned in the comments that they wish that there was a siren or alarm, but I do remember them mentioning that there is an alarm, and it's going to make two tones. One of them sounds like an SOS, and the other one sounds like a distress signal that will be obvious to people.
86
and with that
decibels. Yeah. So I think that's 600 feet it's good for. Does that ring a bell?
Yeah.
600 feet is the figure I have in my head.
86 decibels is pretty loud, actually.
Yeah. Yes. Although your Apple Watch doesn't start to warn you that you're in a too loud of an environment until 90 decibels. So it's pretty close to that, but not quite enough to damage your ear. So I guess maybe they did that on purpose so that you don't damage your own ears while you're while you're setting off that emergency siren for yourself.
But yeah, and there's sort of like a new speaker array. Like there's still every Apple Watch has a speaker, but this one kind of has like a bigger grill, which is on the side of where the action button is, and that's what's allowing it to kind of get this 86 decibel siren to help that you can activate during emergencies. So if you do, hurt yourself on the trail or something like that, you roll your ankle, you need some help, you can this is like another way on top of, emergency calling, all sorts of things to sort of be able to signal to others that you need assistance, which I think is cool, especially like if I know people who are much more, invested in backpacking and hiking than I am. And like, I've known people who have gotten lost for several hours and they managed to make it happen. But like, as Karen gets scared when I say that, there's a reason why these features exist. Like people need them. It's when you head out on a trail, like even the little bit of hiking that I do, I always make sure, I'm as prepared as I possibly can be. That means extra food, extra water, extra, first aid kits and things like that are all stocked and on me and in fanny packs or whatever. So it's stuff like this is helpful and people are definitely going to use it. Battery life. This is another big one. So obviously it's going to have watchOS 9, which means it can use the low power mode. However, its battery life is actually rated for 36 hours as normal. That's without low power mode or any sort of settings. So it's 36 hours, which is twice as long as normal use is rated on the Series 8. You're going to have a day and a half of battery power just by using your Apple Watch Ultra all the time. However, when you are in low power mode and you turn on the low power setting, which is something a little interesting that Apple talked about, you apparently can push it up to 60 hours on a single charge. So that's
is that enough? Is that long enough for you, Luke? You had mentioned on the last show that you would need extended battery, significantly extended battery life for you to consider buying the Ultra.
Yeah. So this is sort of my opinion. It's not long enough when you think about the competitors in the space and sort of what others have done. However, and we'll get to this in just a second, the price of the Apple Watch Ultra is actually a lot lower than I thought it was going to be. And I think it actually surprised a decent amount of people with the price. Well, I guess we'll talk about this now. So it starts at $799 and it doesn't even start. It starts and ends there. There's no extra features to put on because it automatically comes with cellular, because there's kind of no reason to have a watch like this if you don't have a cellular option. So you can leave your phone behind. And it also comes in a titanium finish, which is light and durable. And from accounts, nobody on this call has actually strapped one on their wrist yet. From the accounts we're hearing from people who are actually at the event and stuff like that, apparently it is noticeably lighter and like doesn't feel as chonky as you think it might look.
I think you'd have to because of the bulk that they've added with the new battery and the different design and the 49mm casing. If you combine that with like any of the regular finishes, that would just be, I think, too much Apple Watch like to go on the wrist. So it's good that they kind of counterbalance, or maybe even the titanium overcompensates, like folk have said. So
but yeah. So to reiterate my point, or to come back to it, so for that $77.99, because I had really thought that this was probably going to be like a $999 device. I really thought it was going to be around $1,000, pretty much the same as an iPhone. And like for that price, it was like, yeah, I'm going to need like a week of battery life. You take $200 off that, some of the features it's added are pretty compelling. I think like things like, even for me, who's somebody who isn't, going to go scuba diving all the time or maybe ever, but like things like night mode, the ability just to have an Apple Watch that like, even without low power mode, lasts for a day and a half totally. Things like that really excite me. And I think for $799, the 60 hours is not bad. Obviously I would like it to be pushed up.
That is 2.5 full days though.
Yeah.
So I feel like if anyone's buying a watch that they specifically need for 3 or more days of remote outdoor activity, I probably still don't know if you'd recommend like Apple Watch over something even more specialized than this. But remember, with that trade-off, you're still getting all the great new features of the Series 8 and, all the different health features and things like that. So I think the market for people who need more than that 2.5 days is probably quite narrow, but it's not. I think, was it this Galaxy Watch Pro that has about an 80-hour battery life, I think, as well. So yeah, it is tight with the competition.
So
yeah, plus keep in mind, you can take it off at night and not
Mhm.
and have it powered off entirely
Yeah,
while you sleep, if you can live
totally.
without sleep tracking while you're out adventuring.
Yep.
Mhm. But yeah, I mean, like the ability, like if you put a cellular plan on this, if that's your plan, which it'll automatically have, as we mentioned, not the plan, but it'll have the ability to be cellular. That means like you can go away for a weekend and not have to bring your phone with you. You can just bring your watch and go hiking for your weekend. Come back if you're a
Mm.
weekend warrior. I think this is like pretty compelling in that aspect. So I think obviously I would love to see more because we always want more. But it's pretty great. I think like $7.99 was I was kind of blown away when they announced the price. I really
Yeah.
thought they were going to push this up, and honestly, if it was $9.99, I would say that this probably isn't enough. But the
And
$7.99 price
it's
makes it like really competitive, I think,
and
for
it's
a
cheaper
lot of people.
than the titanium model of the Series 7 was, isn't it?
Mhm.
Yeah, yeah, which was
Which is
interesting.
wild.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So in a year that we kept thinking everything was potentially going to go up and be really expensive, Apple's like managed to keep their prices. I mean, not that $7.99 is cheap by any means, but like they've kept their prices down
Yeah.
and not rising, which is nice. So
Remember as well, which is exciting, this is the very first ever Apple Watch Ultra.
oh,
Like, remember,
totally.
like if you look back now, like the first Apple Watch, kind of terrible. Like it has got significantly better in just a few iterations. So hopefully Apple will have another run at Ultra next year or in 18 months, 2 years, and things like that. And things will only get, better in terms of whether it's the battery and efficiency or different features and things like that. So this is even if you're looking at the Apple Watch Ultra and maybe like Luke, you're thinking, oh, still not enough battery, or still not quite what I need. This is hopefully a sign that Apple is looking to kind of invest in this sphere. So maybe in the future there will be something comes along that does kind of meet your needs, even if it's not the case right now.
Yeah, totally. So it's it's interesting. I think the Apple Watch Ultra put on a pretty strong showcase. Actually, I think it was like a really, even though we had heard a lot about a rugged watch and stuff, we didn't necessarily know what it was going to look like, what it
Mhm.
was going to be. And I think for our first outing into sort of that more sports enthusiast sort of smartwatch uh, space, I think this is pretty strong.
Mm.
I think there's a lot of people
Yeah.
who would be interested in this, and I think like Apple's also purposely riding that line where like, for someone, who maybe might not want it for the fact that it can go into minus 20 Celsius or plus 55 Celsius or whatever, but just kind of wants a bit of a better Apple Watch. I think they ride that line. So they're kind of getting a bit of the best of both worlds. I'll be interested to see, as Steven says, in further iterations, if they jump this up to more in that smartwatch sports space. It'll be
Mhm.
interesting to see. Do you guys do you two think that this will be an annual update like the Series 8, or do you think it'll have like a slightly different release cycle? You think maybe every like 2 years it gets an update? What do y'all think? Because I'm
The
interested
only
about that.
Yeah, the only thing out is, of course, because it's quite expensive. When
Mhm.
you put an update, it's not Apple Watch isn't like iPhone, and I think that probably if you buy a watch, you're hopefully going to keep it for a couple of years, 3 years. So that was the only reservation I'd have. If Apple starts putting out these every year, people are going to start thinking, I just bought an Apple Watch Ultra 12 months ago, and now there's another one, and it's another $800-900 or whatever. But I don't see why they wouldn't. Or maybe, but then again, the SE, which is an incredibly popular Apple Watch,
Mhm.
one of its best. This is only the second time it's been updated in 3 years. Is that since we first got the
Yeah.
SE? So
Yeah.
who knows? It could go either way. It could be, maybe it will be one and done, but I don't think so. I think Apple is in this one for the long haul. But it wouldn't surprise me if it wasn't a 12-month upgrade cycle
Yeah,
from Apple,
I'm
not for
with you.
users.
I'm thinking every 2 years makes sense. But
Yeah.
I wouldn't be surprised if it was every year.
Yeah, it'll depend. I kind of am thinking that too. I'm curious if this will be something they upgrade like every other year, but a new like basic series we kind of expect every year. So I'm interested.
Yeah.
All right, we got to get into iPhone because there's so much to talk about.
Woo.
but we'll talk about just the iPhone 14 first, which there are two of them. There is the iPhone 14, which is kind of the normal 6.1. Please tell me I have that right. Yeah, 6.1 inch
6.1.
regular 14 that we've kind of is just like the 13 and the 12 before it. But there is also the 6.7 14 Plus.
Which
that's
is everything that changed with iPhone 14. So onto the Pro.
Yeah. Not the most exciting announcement, but it is interesting that they're going Plus instead of Mini this year. That's I think it's kind of a niche phone. I don't know how many people are going to be after that one, but I think there's definitely a market for it. I guess we'll find out if Apple continues to carry this particular model or not.
Yeah. We heard about this for so long, didn't we? The Mini was done.
Yes.
The Mini was done. There's a big one coming. So yeah, we'll just have to see what happens. I did cut you off there. Did anything else actually change? It's the same iPhone 14. If you've got an iPhone 30, it's the same design. There's different colors, isn't there? The colors are new. So we've got Midnight Purple, Starlight, Product Red, and Blue. The processor is the same. The camera has been upgraded. Luke, I'll let you take us through the camera.
Yeah, so they still have the same 12 megapixel camera system, but they both have larger sensors than previous iPhones. Which, if you know anything about cameras, larger sensors are pretty much good. Allow more light, more detail, all that sort of stuff. So it'll be interesting to see how much of improvement that actually makes, though. Obviously nowhere near as big of an improvement as the cameras on the iPhone 14 Pro, which we'll get to right away. But yeah, it also has a new front-facing true depth camera system and an ultra-wide lens that introduced the new photonic engine for vast improvements in low light performance, as Apple said on stage. Well, how that actually translate into how well it's going to work in, night mode photography, things like that, we'll have to see. We'll have to test it out. We'll have to see what it actually looks like. But it does have some camera upgrades to a degree, even if the actual megapixels or haven't changed that much.
The action mode stuff looks really cool. So they've got a new, basically a very, very what's the word, like harsh new stabilization kind of technique that uses the whole like sensor. So they used someone chasing like a person running and showed like the comparison, and one was noticeably less kind of shaky and juddery. So the way they positioned it is that you could almost take cinematic film without like a gimbal, which is pretty exciting, and that's on the Pro as well as the regular iPhone 14. But I thought that was a cool one. And also autofocus, I think, on the front facing camera too, so you can take better portraits and selfies and stuff like that, even if you've got like multiple people at different depths and stuff in the photo, which is cool. So maybe I was unfair. They're modest, but they are camera changes to the iPhone 14. But
the action mode is probably the most exciting change for the iPhone 14, I think, because that is a big thing. Like, as somebody who has taken video of their kids doing various sports and stuff like that, something that stabilization will really come in handy. But the other stuff, instead of a 4-core GPU, it's now a 5-core GPU. Is that something that normal everyday people are really going to notice? I don't
almost know. Certainly not. The SIM card tray is gone for
US
the
only.
iPhone 14 Pro in the US. Yeah, so
that's only the Pro though.
eSIM or bust.
No,
it's across the board.
Yeah.
Oh, is it? Okay. Yeah. Sorry.
Or at least our information page about the iPhone 14 says that it's across the board. So if not, we're grossly misleading people on that front. But yeah, I'm pretty sure it was a universal across all the models. So eSIM or bust if you're in the US, which I only use one phone and one SIM card, but there must be people who don't, who might find that a bit of a pain, but who knows? There are security trade-offs. It is better. So
I just double checked on Apple. You are correct.
Yeah. That's, once again, being in Canada, I just use a SIM card, and I've been transferring that SIM card from phone to phone to phone to phone for years now. So, it would be weird to not have a SIM tray, but from my understanding, Apple didn't say this, but from my understanding, it's just Apple sort of trying to get around the US carriers a little bit I think, with some of that stuff, and
Hmm.
I don't know. It seems it seems like an odd decision.
Yeah, it's not
I
quite as controversial, but it's up there with like headphone jack lightning like as a thing. Like, we are doing this and you won't like it, but in 5 years, every phone will look like this. But yeah, not even,
Yeah.
I know certainly abroad,
yeah.
but maybe even in the US, not all carriers even support eSIMs.
Yeah,
Now,
exactly. So
if they don't, I'm sure they will soon, because they're not going to want to miss out on selling the iPhone 14 to customers. So maybe it's the spark that end of the market needs to push it. But yeah, definitely a bold kind of statement to cut it out. And again, like in, it's like the very early years of the iPhone, where there were lots of different models and types of phone, because we were all running on different frequencies and airwaves and whatever
Yeah,
it
that
was,
was awful.
GSMA, or I nearly said MDMA, but that's definitely not a frequency. That is
Yeah,
that's
no,
completely
no.
different. So I think the less said about that, the better. It's been a long week.
Yeah, and don't forget battery. There's definitely a battery improvement.
Yeah.
So where the iPhone 13 had up to 19 hours of video playback, the iPhone 14 will have up to 20 hours. So we get an extra hour there. The iPhone 14 Plus, since it's bigger, can have a bigger battery, so it's going to have up to 26 hours of video playback.
Yeah.
So that's
Again,
that's
not
pretty
having a
good.
SIM card tray, more room inside for other internal components. So
Yeah.
I don't know if that's yielded results this year, but in the future, it might. So yeah, and then the other big
And
thing is the satellite connectivity, which finally gave us the meaning of the Far Out event that Apple
yes,
teased.
as
yes.
people had talked about, but the iPhone 14 and the iPhone 14 Pro will have satellite connectivity, but only for emergency services. So it's not like it's all of a sudden a satellite phone. We're not quite there yet. I'm sure we'll get there one day, but we're not quite there yet. But with emergency SOS via satellite, users can get through to emergency services even when they're out of range of cellular and Wi-Fi networks, which once again plays to the fears of Karen getting lost. But if you do happen to be, I mean, it's not even necessarily lost. Some rural highways, I know, especially here in Canada, we have a hard time with once you get out of the major metro areas, cell phone coverage can get really spotty in some of our rural, even our rural towns that aren't even that far away from city centers.
Yeah,
and stuff,
it doesn't
so.
here in the US, it doesn't even have to be rural. There's just a lot of spots where there's no cell service.
Yeah.
It's in random places.
And I mean, one of the best reasons we all have these phones in our pockets is so that, if we are in emergencies, we can contact someone.
Yeah.
We don't think about it that often, but remember in the days when there were no cell phones, and if you had to call 911, you had to run to a payphone or
you guys
at home.
I do. I
would
remember
it surprise you to know what? I do not recall those days. No,
no, of course not.
But I can imagine it was terrible.
I vaguely recall.
No, I recall very well, but it's important to note that this emergency SOS via satellite is by subscription, and it's going to be free for 2 years, which means that after 2 years, you'll have to pay for it for the rest of your life. So
yeah, that was Apple spent a good amount of time telling us about this amazing, let's be honest, life-saving potentially feature. And it was so cool because they've had to develop a completely new way that the phone can communicate with the satellites, so that you can see, because you have to point your phone at the satellite in order to get it to work. There's it's almost like the air tags, or like a mini game where you have to keep it within the the range to make sure you get the signal. And then they told us about how difficult it is to send information, so they've compressed it into these autofill forms, so you can say what's happened, have you been in a crash, or have you got lost, or is someone hurt or injured, to get emergency services that information without all that back and forth. They told us all this amazing stuff, and it was oh yeah, free for 2 years, and everyone was like, free?
And then what? And then how much?
Yeah. So this is a
subscription-based
service.
Yeah.
It will be at some point. Yeah.
So, and Scott C in the comments asked if the 12 or 13 has the hardware inside for the satellite, and the answer is no.
No.
This is only the iPhone 14. 14 Pro,
as we sort of said, they'd made a lot of changes, I think, with the satellite connectivity to kind of get this up and running with the iPhone. So it's not just like a software thing, unfortunately, that Apple could do. But if you buy an iPhone 14, you'll get this for 2 years. And then presumably between now and then, we will find out from Apple how much emergency satellite costs.
Yeah.
Will it
And
be part of
the
Apple
other
One?
important feature, right? I'm sorry. Go ahead.
Nope, that's all I was going to say.
Yeah. So, and the other important new feature for the iPhone 14 is the crash detection. That is
Yes.
on the 14 and the 14 Plus, as well as the 14 Pro
Mhm.
models. It is not available on the iPhone 13 or earlier models.
Yeah. Yeah. So you can, even if you don't have, the new Apple Watches, you can get crash detection on your iPhone, which is kind of nice. It's kind of an extra little feature. But other than that, the iPhone 14 and the iPhone 14 Plus are pretty much just the iPhone 13 with a few extra things. Starting price is $799 for the iPhone 14. It'll be $899 for the 14 Plus. You can order the 14 now, and the launch date is September 16th. But depending on backlogs or I'm sure the date has slipped for ordering now. However, the 14,
if that's the first time you've learned that, it's already too late. That's the
yeah.
So,
But,
what do you guys think the most popular color amongst the iMore readers that responded to our poll was, if you had to guess?
blue.
Yeah, I'll go with
What do you think, Luke?
the black or the midnight or whatever what they're calling it this one.
So I had to lump midnight and starlight together because you can only have 4 options on
Right.
Twitter, but the most popular was purple.
Oh, there you go.
And then midnight starlight, then blue, then red.
Okay, there you go.
Yeah, almost half the people, 48%, said purple.
Cool. Last thing though, the iPhone 14 Plus is a little delayed. It doesn't actually have a launch date until October 7th. So you will be waiting a bit longer to get that in your hands. But yeah, you can order one now, but it's going to be a while before it ships, or you'll see it in stores.
So do you guys think the iPhone 14 Plus will be a big hit?
Yes.
Because I don't think it will be.
Everybody prefers, I think, I always get the Pro because it's usually just for financial reasons. I think everybody prefers the Max over the Pro. I think everyone likes having the bigger screen and more battery. So I think everyone will also prefer, not everyone's going to buy it, but I think everyone will prefer the larger phone over the small one. I think it'll be a hit.
I just don't think so.
I don't think
you say everyone because you do.
Yeah. Maybe this is true. I don't think it will flop like the mini iPhone did. We shall see.
I think it will do better than the mini, but I don't think it will do as well as the Pro models or as well as just the regular 14. Maybe that's the more important distinction. I don't think it will do as well as the regular 14.
Interesting.
Yeah, I'm not sure. I mean, to what you said, Karen, if I was to buy one of these, if someone was like, "Hey, buy an iPhone 14," I would go with the Plus. But that's me. I kind of prefer bigger phones, so I'm not sure. I think what's clear is that the Mini probably didn't sell as well as Apple either hoped or thought it would, and that's why it's likely not included anymore. And they have sold Plus phones, obviously, for a long time, when they always would do, the 6S Plus, the 7S Plus, the 8 Plus, and so I think maybe they're going back to a model that they think works better. So they're I'm sure Apple has done a ton of marketing around or market research about that.
Yeah. It's still selling is it the 13 mini in the store? So that was an interesting weird thing we didn't talk about. Apple's kept around the iPhone 12 and iPhone 13 alongside the iPhone 14. Usually you would expect to see one of those drop off. Yeah. But I think, again, so that people can still buy a mini if they want, we've got one of them still has the mini in the lineup. I want to say it's the 13. Sorry if I'm wrong.
The 13,
yes, it's the 13.
It is the 13.
Brilliant.
The iPhone 12 mini was what I had, and the battery life was just miserable on that. So that's the one they dropped.
Yeah. All right. We saved probably the best for last, but the iPhone 14 Pro. Let's just start off with where it started off. They launched this, and all of a sudden the dynamic island blew everyone away, I think.
It was the one thing that nobody leaked. No rumors, nothing. We knew this was a total surprise.
Yep.
We forget about the name of it.
Yeah.
Just the whole concept.
We knew the notch was changing. It was gone. That there was going to be some sort of hole punch exclamation mark. And then maybe about a week before, it was like, oh no, it's just going to be one wide pill. But yeah, Apple has taken this seemingly design hindrance, big hole in the screen, and has turned it into this incredible piece of software UI. I think it's tremendous.
Yeah.
The
So
only question is it going to be another touch bar that looks so cool in the intro, but in reality, nobody ever used? Or is it really going to be something that people fall in love with?
I mean, from even just a little bit they showed, obviously I have not tried one. But like it's the single feature that immediately made me be like, I don't want any iPhone 14. I came into the event saying I don't want any iPhone 14, and now I want the iPhone 14 Pro. Like, it blew me away. It's such an interesting, cool way of using that space and making it something unique. I think, Karen, we've talked about this a lot on the show, specifically that like notch, exclamation point, pill, whatever. If they're not doing anything up there, it doesn't matter. Well, now they're doing something up there. It does matter.
Yeah.
And I think that's so cool. So if you're confused, if you didn't watch the event, which I have to assume most people listening did, but if you didn't, the dynamic island up by the pill, which I believe, if I remember correctly, technically is actually that exclamation point that we've been seeing, but every time you have it turned on, it automatically turns into a little pill. I could be wrong about that, but either way, the point being is there's a UI now that uses that software, or that uses that space as like a contextual, like live activity that can do things like have your music going. So like when you have music playing, you'll see it up in that little bar, and you'll see like a little a little music playing thing. You can tap on it, drag it down, so you can, pause, play, go back and forth. That UI is dynamic, it's interactive, and I think that's incredibly cool. It just uses something that people automatically assumed would be a negative and completely turned it around into something that like I think is going to be a big selling point of the phone.
Yeah, it is definitely a pill shade, by the way.
Yeah.
Oh, it is just pill shade?
Yeah, when you're not using it.
I think I'm sure I've seen like there's different like UI like configurations of it. But I think it's just the fact that Apple have taken something that you would have always noticed is there, and now you'll probably, I mean, you won't until you use it, but you'll never notice that it's there, which is just brilliant, because there'll always be something going on. So it's like that, negative space, the black space exists for a reason, because it'll always be part of something, that's going on the screen, whether it's a timer or the music, like you said, and things. So yeah, I'm really stoked to see it in person.
So what do you think you would use it for the most? How would you see yourself using it?
It's hard. It's hard without being able to see everything it can do and having it in my hand. But like, I mean, I listen to a lot of music, so I think like,
so I think controlling your music.
I think controlling your music, like just being able to swipe down and stuff like that from that would be really, really probably something that I would use a lot. Yeah, I think that's probably the biggest use I can think of right now. But like, I think there's so much potential, and there's going to be so much potential moving forward that I'm super excited to see what they can do.
Yeah. So do you think Apple will allow developers to use this for third-party apps?
Yeah,
I would have to. From what I understand, I actually have a bit of insight on this. I saw on a Twitter thread. Actually, you may remember a former guest of the show. It was Apollo creator. And why am I blanking on his name right now?
Christian.
Christian, thank you. He was talking about like what that API is and stuff. And from what I understand, Serenity Caldwell, old iMore turned into Apple employee, did specify that it is part of the live activities API. From what I can understand, there's a Twitter thread out there you can go look at. Go hit up Christian Selig on Twitter. He'll and see that thread. But I believe it will be open to developers, I think, and they'll be able to start playing around with it.
And I think the good thing, Karen, to answer your question is, the best thing, in my opinion, about this is you don't have to use it. It just sort of happens. I think that's so when you start playing music and then you throw back to the home screen, your music just is kind of there. Like, so I think it's just kind of like a passive part of the experience, as opposed to, obviously you'll be able to answer notifications and calls and stuff like that. But I think the best thing about this is it's like it doesn't feel like clumsy or like you'll be working around something. It's something that will just kind of happen naturally as you use the iPhone. So, but yeah, when in terms of the live activities and stuff, it will be cool to see. I mean, you have to imagine, even from like a competition standpoint, if you can put Apple Music up into the dynamic island, you probably will also have to be able to put Spotify or Tidal or whatever it is you want, or like a third-party podcast host and things like that. I don't think Apple would want to put in a feature like this and then not give, you know, big rivals, you know, the disadvantage by not allowing them to make use of it as well.
Yeah. So I imagine you'll be following along your sports scores, Stephen.
Yes, exactly. Yes.
No one the Cleveland,
your sports games and all that kind of stuff.
So you can see how many games the Browns lose every year.
Yes,
right,
yes,
right,
absolutely.
Right on your island, right on your dynamic island. Yeah, all I can say is it's just so crazy. It just still blows my mind. Like even thinking about it, about how like I was so ready to just be like, I'm not getting like anything this event for the most part. I was interested in the Apple Watch stuff, but like when it came to iPhone, I was like, I don't think it's a year for upgrade for me. And now it's like all I can think about is the Pro, and I'm like, when can I buy it? I can't afford it right now because I'm moving and that's expensive. But can I get it in a few months? I probably can. I probably will. It sounds like it might be my Christmas present to myself this year. So that's really cool. But of course, there's other features that we want to get into real quick. So starting with the processor, as we kind of thought leading up to the event, it is getting the new processor. The Pro models, both the Pro model and the Pro Max, are getting the A6 Bionic, which features a 6-core GPU with 2 performance cores and 4 efficiency cores, plus a 6-core CPU and plus a 5-core GPU. There's also
a new neural engine.
Yes, a 16-core neural engine. And Apple says that the A16 is the fastest chip in a smartphone, obviously, ever. And it's 40% faster than the competition, according to Apple's, little charts that they like to put up that kind of sort of half tell a story. But so it will be more powerful. It'll be more powerful than your iPhone 13. How much you'll notice that power kind of depends on you, depends on how much you use it.
With the big camera improvements, I think this is the first year where you've got the process and you're like, I'm glad that's there to take it, because Apple's telling us about the new, which we'll get onto, the camera and stuff like that, and you're glad we've got the processing power to kind of back up all the different image processing and stuff that Apple plans to do with taking photos and things like that with the new cameras.
Yeah. So the display, before we get to the cameras, the display, it is an always on display. There's an always on display on the iPhone 14 Pro and the 14 Pro Max, which for making use of those, lock screen widgets and things like that in iOS 16, I think, we kind of expected this, and I think it's like a natural evolution, which is great. Which I think is really cool. So there is an always on display, but it's only for the Pro models, which we expected. But other than that, I don't think the display
200 nits of brightness in outdoor conditions. That's
2000.
That's a big deal. 2000. Did I not say that?
You said 200. Yeah.
Oh, yep.
No worries. Yeah.
And did you mention, Luke, the 1 hertz refresh rate? That's new because that's what enables the always on.
So
without destroying the battery.
Exactly. So when the always on is on, it'll have a super low refresh rate, and that's what makes sure that your battery can keep going, and it's not just constantly using a bunch of energy for a display that might just be on the table or whatever. Then the camera, obviously, we know that the Pro models, Apple has really been pushing the cameras and upgrades to the camera, and as we had heard, the main camera is now a 48 megapixel camera. It also still has a 12 megapixel ultra wide and a 12 megapixel telephoto lens. And with the main 48 megapixel camera is a 1.78 aperture. So it's a little bit of a better aperture, a little bit of a wider sensor. And there's a new photonic engine that takes computational photography to new fun levels as well, which I think is pretty cool. Also, Pro RAW technology has been improved a bit, so it's going to work a little better. You're going to get more detail, more crispness from your photos. And then obviously the action mode, which we talked about, is also included in this. That big sensor is that big megapixel 48 megapixel camera is I want to get it in my hands. I want to see what it can do. You know, megapixels are only one part of a camera quality. Like sensors are a big one, aperture is another one, but all of them have been kind of bigger. The camera bump looks even bigger this year. The cameras themselves look like they protrude even more.
It's definitely bigger.
Yeah. So
I mean, not just sticking. I'm not sure about the sticking out more, but it's bigger.
Yeah.
It's wider and longer.
Yeah.
I mean, it's just a bigger square on the back of your phone.
Yeah, it's a bigger square, and it might just be an illusion, but and I don't have them side by side, and I don't know for sure, but like it kind of looks like the cameras even like kind of protrude a little bit further. I'm not sure if that's true, but it just
I'll have them side by side in a week.
Yeah, there we go. We'll be able to see.
My 13 Pro, my 14 Pro.
But it looks chonky. It looks chonky.
Yeah, and the phone itself is bigger in every dimension as well. It's heavier. Karen, it's like, go ahead.
Yeah, Karen, I was just gonna say, you are the person who said, you know, you use your iPhone is your main camera. You don't have a dedicated camera. Your iPhone is what you use. Are you excited about these camera upgrades? Are you like pumped to get this in your hands?
Yes, I am super excited about that. I literally have never used anything like a 48 megapixel camera. So I'm excited to see what I can do with that.
Yeah, it's I think it's going to be pretty cool. I mean, like I like the iPhone pictures I can get off even, you know, my iPhone 11 here. Like the iPhone camera has been great for, you know, producing like nice sort of like realistic shots that don't kind of oversaturate or things like that. And this is just going to, I think, like even bring that to the next level. I'm super pumped to start seeing, like, cause we always know that every year on their iPhones, you know, Apple will always highlight the sort of shot on iPhone campaign, right? They'll make commercials, they'll have, you know, contests, things like that. And I'm super pumped to see what, you know, photographers and videographers out there come up with, and just to see, you know, photos from my friends and stuff. And, you know, from Karen, I can't wait to see your test shots and kind of what that looks like, and everything that action mode can do too. I'm excited for that, to see like, you know, can we get like pretty good stills? Like if I'm running around playing dodgeball, as I do sometimes, will somebody be able to catch me mid throw and things like that? I'm pumped. Like it's great when, you know, phones have come such a far way, and there's still improvements to be made. And companies like Apple and other companies are just like pushing phones to be even more. So they're kind of like more of these omni devices that are always in our pocket.
Right.
Which is great. Yeah, the battery, there hasn't been too many changes really this year from last year. The only change really is kind of like with video playback, which is a pretty good indication of you know, how much battery power you kind of have. On the iPhone 14 Pro, the video playback goes from 22 to 23 hours. So it has 23 hours over last year's 22. And on the Pro Max, it jumps another hour. It jumps an hour from 28 to 29. So minor improvements, which, I mean, honestly, the 13 Pro had a tremendous battery life. I remember that being like one of the best things about it. It like just seemed to kind of go forever. Really, like I would very often get to the end of the day and still have like a good amount of percentage left, even with the heavy use of kind of our jobs and my life in general. So I'm excited about that a little bit. You know, a little bit more. We'll actually see if there's any changes to the physical size, like the milliamp hours. We always kind of get that stuff afterwards. Apple doesn't typically release that sort of stuff. They kind of try to think of things in more like real world applications, like video playback or audio playback. But we should see some improvements there, even if we don't necessarily see any improvements on size. And then, of course, as we mentioned before, emergency SOS via satellite also makes it to the Pro. And
all
the
Pro
Max.
Upgrades that came to the iPhone 14 are also coming to the iPhone 14 Pro.
And the price also hasn't changed. Yep.
The price hasn't changed, which I was so expecting it to. I was so expecting it to go up.
Unless you don't live in the US, like in the UK, the Pro is £150 more expensive than it was last year.
So interesting. Okay.
That is gonna sting at the upgrade next week, but we move.
Oh, I should check. I didn't even check just because like I'm not buying anything right away, but I should check up here in Canada. I wouldn't be surprised if we have maybe
Europe,
more.
Philippines, Malaysia, Japan, lots of price increases. Yep.
Yeah. Okay. So if you're in the US, the price is still you know, $9.99 for the Pro, and then that's for the 128 gigabit model. and then rises to, goes up from there. And then the Pro
Goes up
Max
from there,
starts
yeah.
at the 11, or sorry, at the 1099.
Yeah.
Yeah. And you can get up to a terabyte, right? Which I think,
Same
could you
as
do
same
that?
as with
Is
the
that the
13
Pro?
Pro.
Yeah. Yeah. Right. We
Yeah.
We
had
were told
heard
maybe extra
maybe,
2, yeah.
yeah, but unfortunately that didn't happen, which is a little sad for, just a little sad because that new megapixel camera will likely make
Mhm.
some pretty big files.
I think
Um,
they're about photos about 3 times as larger, I think, according to initial reports. So,
yeah.
which is
So if
good
you,
because
We
they're
still
4
have
times bigger, but that's still a lot.
mhm.
Yeah, but we still have one more device to get to. One more announcement.
Yes, one more announcement, which once again, not a huge upgrade, but the AirPods Pro 2 are now a real thing, and the first AirPods that have been announced like at a event since the very originals, which was why right before the event I was like, they're not going to talk about it, and then I was wrong. So um, that's why That's why I'm not a leaker. I'm just somebody who talks about leaks because I know nothing. Yeah, the AirPods Pro 2, pretty much the same as the Pro with
Yeah,
very
pretty
few
much
changes.
the same design. They've got a new chip which helps mostly with the active noise cancellation. It's now like double the strength in terms of noise cancellation. So you're going to hear
Yeah.
half as much noise as you used to, which is considerably less. There's a new case which has a speaker in the case for helping you find it. It's got a lanyard loop. You can get emojis engraved on the case now, and it also the case works with an Apple Watch charger, which is really cool. And then they also have touch controls on the stems, which is really nice. This is something Nothing does on their earbuds, and I find it really, really cool and useful. So I'm excited to see how touch controls work. That should be good. Oh, and there's also a new extra small ear tip as well. So you've got one more choice of size when you're putting earbuds in your ear.
Yeah, and it looks like from the picture that the extra small is, rather than being smaller in diameter necessarily, it's shallower. So for
Mhm.
people for whom the old AirPods Pro never quite fit right because they seem too deep for like their ear canals are too shallow,
Yeah.
the extra small tip might come
Yeah.
in handy.
Improved battery as well. That's another thing. So you get 6 hours of listening time off your charge, and the case will give you, I believe, another 24. So it's 30 hours in the whole package from one charge, which is nice.
Yeah. Yeah, I have the AirPods 3, like just the normal AirPods 3, and I love them. I'm not a huge fan of like silicone ear tips. I find them
Mm.
like hard to have in my ears. If I want something with noise canceling, I'm going to put on something like these. That's just my personal preference, but by all indications, if you've wanted to buy a Pro, now I guess would be the time. They're the same.
Yep.
They start at the same price as the old Pros do. The old Pros, I'm assuming are going to be, discontinued and not sold anymore. I'm sure you can still find sales here and there. But yeah, I think, there isn't too much difference they could have done. We had heard that they might get a design change without the stems and things like that, which maybe some people would have liked, maybe some people wouldn't have. I don't really, but in terms of actual improvements, it's the noise canceling to see how much better that is, which we're not really going to know until we get them in our ears. To see what to see what that'll be, because I always thought the noise I don't have my own pair, but I've tried them. The noise cancellation was like pretty good, and the transparency mode was very good for earbuds. So I'm excited to see and hear other people's opinions about how much better it can be on the Pro 2. But for me, it's a skip. I'm probably not going to get them.
Yeah, the personalized spatial audio, they made a big thing about that in the during the event. That looks kind of cool, maybe.
Yeah, which is also available on the AirPods 3 in iOS 16. So it's not specific to the AirPods Pro 2, but it is iOS 16. It is an iOS 16 feature from what I can understand, because that's where I first got it, was in the beta. So it's interesting. It's I don't know how much it's done. I've set it up. I don't know how much it's done. I like spatial audio. I think it works decently well. But
yeah,
it's kind of, I'm not audiophile enough, I think, to really notice the difference.
As Stephen Perry pointed out in the comments, there's like an ear scanning thing on the phone now. So to sort of personalize the experience even more, it looks interesting.
Yeah, yeah. You have to like you use the phone camera to like measure the distance between
Mhm.
your ear to like the top. It's weird. It's a weird setup.
Kind of
It's
wild.
interesting. Yeah, it's kind of wild. But I did it in public and I got some weird looks because I'm like sitting there with my phone going like this.
Maybe do that at
And
home.
yeah, so unless you want weird looks, some people like that stuff. So that's okay.
True.
All right before we end, we're going to be finishing up right here right away, but what do you what if anything are you two getting from this event? Steven, let's start with you.
So I am tied into the iPhone upgrade program, so I have already reserved the 128 gig iPhone 14 Pro, not the Max, in space black. That's it for me.
How about you, Karen?
I have pre-ordered my iPhone 14 Pro in deep purple, of course. That's it.
Nice.
Luke, anything from you?
Nothing immediately, but like I said, I think I'm going to get myself the iPhone 14 Pro for Christmas. And if I'm treating myself anyways, why not get the Max version? You know?
Why not?
Yeah. And I'm still undecided about Apple Watch. I'm undecided what I want to do about Apple Watch. I'm like interested in the Ultra, but like I won't really use it for, it's ultraness, if you want to put it that way. So I'm torn. That seems like money I probably don't need to spend, but I also like shiny new things. So we'll have to see. We'll have to see. Maybe I bundle that in with my Christmas gift to myself. But I think I'm pretty confident in saying that although I'm not getting it right away, I will be getting an iPhone 14 Pro Max likely sometime in my future. That is our show. Wow, that was a lot to talk about. There's going to be more coming out in the weeks to come. Please keep it locked here. Listen to us every week. If you are listening to us live, we appreciate all the comments today. There's been a ton of chatter in the comments. Thank you so much for riding along with us. If you're listening to us in your podcatcher of choice, we appreciate you so much. Keep downloading us. Keep letting us know if there's anything you want us to talk about. You can hit us up at iMore on Twitter or at iMoregram on Instagram. Thank you, Karen and Steven, as always, for joining me. It's been fun. And thank you to Jim Metzendorf, our audio editor, who always makes us sound so good. Until next week, we hope you have fun on the dynamic island. Bye.
Bye.